Welcome to Storyflix Film, where movies are not just watched at a broken bar, they are experienced. Here, we bring you fast, powerful, and engaging movie recaps, turning full films into short, exciting stories without missing the thrill. From action-packed blockbusters to emotional dramas and mind-blowing sci-fi, we break it all down in a way that keeps you hooked till the end. So sit back, relax, and get ready, because every story here is a cinematic journey in minutes. 9A is a 2021 Americana action film directed by Justin Lin, who co-wrote the screenplay with Daniel Casey. The sequel to The Fate of the Furious, 2017, it is the 9th mainline installment and the 10th installment overall in the Fast Furious franchise. It stars Vin Diesel, also Dominic Toretto, alongside Michelle Rodriguez, Tyrese Gibson, Chris Ludacris, John Cena, Nathalie Emmanuel, Jordana Brewster, Son Kang, Michael Rooker, Helen Mirren, Kurt Russell, and Charlize Theron. In the film, Dom and his team aim to stop his estranged brother Jakob Toretto and his financier, Otto, from activating Project Ares, a dangerous advanced weapons program. With a 9th film planned since 2014, Lin was confirmed as director in October 2017, returning to the franchise since directing a Fast Furious 6A, 2013. AF9A is the first film in the franchise since Too Fast Too Furious, 2003, to not be written by Chris Morgan. Wayne Johnson, who appeared in the previous 4 films, was announced to return in April 2017, but confirmed his absence in January 2019. The rest of the cast was finalized with the addition of Johnson 6 months later. Brian Tyler returned to compose the score. Principal photography began in June 2019 and lasted until that November, with filming locations including London, Edinburgh, Tbilisi, Los Angeles and Thailand. F9A was originally scheduled for release by Universal Pictures on April 19, 2019, but was delayed several times due to the release of the spin-off film Hobbs Shaw, 2019, the planned release of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer's A James Bond film in No Time to Die, 2021, and the COVID-19 pandemic. It was first released in South Korea on May 19, 2021 and then released in the United States on June 25. The film received mixed reviews from critics, with praise for the stunts, Lin's direction, action sequences and the performances of the cast, while it was criticized for its plot and revision of tropes. It set several pandemic box office records and grossed $726.2 million worldwide, becoming the 5th highest grossing film of 2021. It was followed by Fast Saga in 2023. Plot: in 1989, Jakob Toretto participates in a late model race on a short track, with his sons Dominic and Jakob working in the pit crew. Dom argues with rival racer Kenny Linter about his dirty tactics. During the race, Linter's car clips Jack's bumper, causing his car to crash, killing him. A week after, Dom is arrested for beating Linter to near death. While serving his sentence, Dom recalls that Jakob had worked on Jack's car the day he died and concludes that Jakob killed Jack. Upon release, Dom confronts and challenges Jakob to a race, pitting his 1967 Dodge Charger against Jakob's 1992 Ford Mustang. Jakob loses and Dom forces him to leave Los Angeles. In the present day, Dom is retired and raising his son Brian with his wife Letty Ortiz. Roman Pierce, Tej Parker and Ramsey arrive with the news that shortly after arresting a Cypher, Mr. Nobody's plane was attacked by rogue agents, who abducted Cypher and crashed in Monte Quinto, a fictional Central American country. Dom agrees to help them after realizing Jakob is involved. Searching the plane, they find part of a device called a Project Ares, which can hack into any computer weapons system. The team is ambushed by a private army led by Jakob, who steals the device. Michael Stajakal helps Dom's crew escape to their safe house at the Caspian Sea and Dom's sister Maya arrives to help. The team learns that Honolulu is connected to Project Ares, at which point, Letty and Mia leave for Tokyo to investigate. Meanwhile, Jakob meets with Otto, Jakob's associate and financier, Cypher, who is being held at their base, tells Jakob that the other half of Ares is in Edinburgh. Dom meets his father's mechanic buddy, who took Jakob after his exile, and learns that Jakob is in London. In Tokyo, Letty and Mia find Han alive, along with his wardell. Roman and Tej travel to Germany to recruit a Sean Boswell, a Twinkie and a Earl who have been working on a rocket car. In London, Dom meets a Queenie Shaw, who gives him Jacob's location. Dom confronts Otto and Jakob at a party held at Otto's mansion. Otto has Dom arrested, but Elsa, Dom's old friend, rescues him. Tej, Roman and Ramsey join Dom in Edinburgh, where Jakob uses an electromagnet to steal the other half of the Project Ares. Tej and Roman find the truck containing the electromagnet as they fight Otto's men. Ramsey commandeers the truck to chase after Otto. Dom intercepts Jakob and the two fight throughout the city. Before Otto can extract Jakob, Ramsey runs his car off the road and uses the electromagnet to capture Jakob. At the safe house, Han reveals that Mr. Nobody assigned him to protect Hel and Project Ares as El's DNA is the biometric activation key. When Jakob and Rogan teamed up with Otto, they used a Descartes Shoah to fake Han's death and protect Hel. Otto and his men attack the safe house and free Jakob, who reveals to Dom that Jack, wanting to escape deep debt, had instructed Jakob to tamper with his car to throw the race. Jakob and Otto kidnap El and take the other half of the Project Ares. Otto launches a satellite into orbit, while Jakob has El activate Ares. They begin uploading Ares to the satellite, moving in an armored truck through Howdah to Tbilisi. Dom, Letty, Mia, Ramsey and Han race to stop the upload. As Mia and Han try to breach the truck, Otto reveals that he and Cypher have teamed up and throws Jakob off the truck. Jakob is rescued by Dom and Mia, where he helps them access the truck. Tej and Roman enter orbit and destroy the satellite using the rocket car, stopping the upload. Cypher bombs the truck using Ava in an attempt to kill Dom, but unintentionally kills Otto. Dom uses the ricocheting truck to destroy Cypher's drone, which is revealed to be simulated, and Cypher escapes. Dom and Mia reconcile with Jakob and Dom allows him to escape custody by giving him the keys to his car, finally forgiving Jakob. Tej and Roman reach the International Space Station and return safely to Earth. The team celebrates their success with a barbecue at Dom's house. While preparing to say grace, Brian O'Connor's car arrives in the driveway. In a mid-credits scene, Descartes comes face to face with Han and is shocked to see him alive. Cast main articles: a list of Fast Furious cast members and a list of Fast Furious characters. Vin Diesel. Also Dominic Toretto, a former criminal and professional street racer who has retired and settled down with his wife, Letty, and his son, Brian. Marcos Diesel's son Vincent Sinclair portrays a young Dominic. Willie Vinny Bennett portrays a teenage Dominic. I sense Michelle Rodriguez as Letty Ortiz, Dom's wife and a former criminal and professional street racer. Zadania Hale portrays a young Letty. Sense Tyrese Gibson as Roman Pierce, an ex-habitual offender, expert street racer and a member of Dom's team. Sense Ludacris, credited as Chris Ludacris Bridges, as Tej Parker, a mechanic from Miami and a member of Dom's team. Sense John Cena as Jakob Toretto, the estranged brother of Dom and Mia who is working as a master thief, assassin, and high-performance driver. Also Mr. Nobody's rogue agent, Finn Collier portrays a young Jakob. Sense Nathalie Emmanuel as Ramsey, a British computer hacktivist and a member of Dom's team. 13. Sense Jordana Brewster as Mia Toretto, the sister of Dom and Jakob and a member of the former's team who has settled down with her partner, Brian O'Connor, and their 2 children. 17. Asuna Agudanga portrays a young Mia. Sense Sung Kang also Han Lu, a member of Dom's team who is believed to have been killed. 18. Sense Michael Rooker as Buddy, an auto mechanic who has ties to Dom's past as a member of his father's pit crew. Sense Helen Mirren as Magdalene Queenie L. Manson Shaw, the mother of Dom's former enemies Descartes and Owen. Sense Kurt Russell as Mr. Nobody, an intelligence operative and the leader of a covert ops team. Sense Charlize Theron as Cypher, a criminal mastermind and cyber-terrorist who is an enemy of Dom's team. Sense Thorstein Rasmussen as Otto, a son of an aristocrat who is the financier for Jakob. Sense Anissa Aya as Elu, Han's adoptive daughter. Additionally, AJ. D. Pardoa portrays Jack Toretto, A. Jim Perica portrays Kenny Linder, A. Martin Forda portrays Sue, and A. Cardi Ba portrays Lisa, a woman who shares history with Dom and Magdalene. A. Carson Kern and A. Igby Renia portray young versions of Vince and Jesse, respectively. Lucas Black, A. Don Omar, and Ashay Wyama reprise their respective roles as Sean Boswell, Santos, and Agent Michael Stasiak from previous films. Willie Shadmasa and Adjacent Habina also reprise their respective roles as Twinkie and Earl from The Fast and the Furious, Tokyo Drifter, 2006. Siradanda Osuna portray young versions of Leo and Santos, respectively. 25. Jason Statham reprises his role as Deckard Shaw in an uncredited cameo appearance during the end credits, and Puerto Rican rapper Bad Bunny appears as Lookout. A. Gal Gadot appears as Jisal Yashar through archival footage. Production development in November 2014, A. Universal Pictures chairwoman Donna Langley confirmed that a discussion regarding 3 sequels to A Furious 7 2015 had taken place. Actor Vin Diesel reaffirmed this in September 2015, alluding the trilogy could lead to the mainline series conclusion. Furious 7 2015. A film director James Wan was originally contractually hired to direct The Fate of the Furious 2017, and this film, but the studio let him go after he told them about his wishes to make The Conjuring 2 2016, a sequel to his previous horror film The Conjuring 2013, and firmly declined directing both the 8th film and this film due to the 7th film's demanding production impacting on his health. October 2017, Diesel revealed in a Facebook Live video that Justin Lin, who directed every film from The Fast and the Furious, Tokyo Drifter, 2006, through The Fast Furious 6 2013, would be returning to direct this film and A Fast Saga, 2023. In May 2018, A. Daniel Casa was hired to write the screenplay after Chris Morgana left due to his work in I Hobbs Shaw, 2019. A. Neil H. Moritz returned as producer after being left out of Hobbs Shaw, 2019, due to issues with the Universal Pictures. Casting in April 2017, A. Vin Diesel and Dwayne Johnson stated that they would return. In October 2017, A. Jordana Brewster, who portrayed Mia Toretto in 5 of the franchise's films, was set to reprise her role for the 9th and 10th entries. April 4, 2018, Johnson stated that he was now unsure if would return for this film due to working on I Hobbs Shaw, 2019, and he confirmed in January 2019 that neither he nor Jason Statham would be returning and reprising their roles as Luke Hobbs and Deckard Shaw respectively for this film due to production of Hobbs Shaw, 2019. Ultimately Statham only made a cameo appearance during the mid-credits scene. In June 2019, A. Johnson was officially cast in the film, after an initial announcement from Diesel in April. In July 2019, A. Finn Cole, A. Anna Sawai, and Vinnie Bennett joined the cast of the film. That same month, it was announced that Helen Mirren and Charlize Theron would reprise their roles, with Michelle Rodriguez also confirmed to return. A. Michael Rooker and MMA fighter Francis Ngannou were added to the cast in August. In October 2019, A. Ozuna and Cardi Ba joined the cast of the film. Filming principal photography began on June 24, 2019, at Leavesden Studios in Hertfordshire, England. Filming took place in Los Angeles, Edinburgh and London, 43A, and also took place in Thailand for the first time, with the Krabi, Koh-Phangan, and Phuket used as locations. Part of the film was also shot in Tbilisi, Georgia. Filming wrapped on November 11, 2019. In July 2019, stuntman Joe Watts, who doubled for Diesel, sustained a serious head injury during filming at Leavesden Studios in September 2020. A. Michelle Rodriguez confirmed the film would be set in outer space as well, which was teased by Diesel. Post-production Dylan Highsmith, Kelly Matsumoto and Greg Doria served as the film's editors, with additional editing provided by David Kern. Peter Chiang, who worked with Lin on Star Trek Beyond, 2016, served as the overall visual effects supervisor with Idnog, A Industrial Light Magic, A Lola VFX, Stereo D and Factory VFX as the vendors. NIG also converted the film to 3D music on July 31, 2020. A mixed P titled A Road to F9A was released, and features music inspired by the film. The mixtape was preceded by the lead single One Shot by Young Boy Never Broke Again and Lil Baby. Trailers for the film included the songs Family by The Chainsmokers and Kygo, Is You Ready by Amigos and Silla by Kanye West. The official soundtrack was released on June 17, 2021. The score album, composed by Brian Tyler, was released on July 2, 2021. Released theatrical F9A had its world premiere in South Korea on May 19, 2021, at the United Kingdom on June 24 and was released in the United States on June 25. The film had 5 previous planned release dates in the United States between 2019 and 2021. These shifts were reportedly made due to the releases of Hobbs Shaw and the James Bond film in No Time to Die, 2021, as well as the COVID-19 pandemic. Home media F9A was released in a Blu-ray, a Ultra HD Blu-ray, and edited on September 21, 2021, by Universal Pictures Home Entertainment. These media featured the theatrical version and a director's cut version, with the latter being 7 minutes longer. The film is also offered as a ultra high definition steelbook featuring the poster alongside both versions of the film. It was released as a rental on Navoda services in the United States on July 30, 2021. F9A was also released on Blu-ray and DVD on October 11, 2021. In January 2022, tech firm Akami reported that F9A was the 4th most pirated film of 2021. F9A was released on HBO Max on March 4, 2022. Reception box office F9A grossed $173 million in the United States and Canada, and $553.2 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $726.2 million. It was the 5th highest grossing film of 2021. In the United States and Canada, AF9A was projected to gross $65 million from 4,179 theaters in its opening weekend. The film made $30 million on its first day, including $7.1 million from Thursday night previews, both the best such totals of the pandemic period. It went on to debut to $70 million, the highest grossing weekend since Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, $72.4 million, in December 2019. Like previous Fast Furious films, the audience was diverse, with 37% Hispanic, 35% Caucasian, 16% Black and 8% Asian, and skewed to both younger, 51% under the age of 25, and male, 57%, crowds. In its second weekend, the film fell 65% to $23 million, remaining atop the box office with Universal's F9, at The Boss Baby, Family Business, and The Forever Purgia finishing in the top 3 spots. It marked the first time a single studio accomplished the feat since February 2005. 67. It also crossed $100 million domestically and $500 million internationally in record time for the COVID-19 pandemic era. The film made $11.4 million but was dethroned by newcomer Black Widow the following weekend, then made $7.6 million in its 4th frame, finishing in 4th. Over its 5-day international opening weekend, beginning May 19. AF9A was projected to gross $180 million from 8 countries, including China, Russia, and South Korea. It went on to debut to $163 million, the biggest international opening for a Hollywood film since the pandemic began in March 2020. It also set the pandemic record for IMAX gross, $14 million, and was the 2nd biggest May international opening ever, despite playing in 26 fewer countries than the current record holder, Captain America: Civil War. The top markets from the weekend were China, $136 million, the 2nd biggest ever opening of the franchise in the country, South Korea, $9.9 million, Russia, $8.3 million, Saudi Arabia, $2.67 million, and the UAE, $2.64 million. In its second weekend of international release, the film made $30.8 million, including $20.3 million, minus 85%, in China, and $3.7 million, minus 42%, in South Korea. Fast and FS9 that is released in 2021. It feels like I ask this question with every new Fast and Furious movie. But who could have imagined that the modestly budget first film about a hardshot undercover cop infiltrating the Los Angeles street racing scene would not only become a hit franchise but also a global box office juggernaut. Yet here we are 20 years after 2001, the Fast and the Furious, with the 9th installment of the immensely popular series, and if you need further proof of its beloved status, the film has already racked in nearly $300 million in its limited international release. Impressive numbers, especially during a pandemic. I am still not sure of the official title. Fast and Furious 9 AF9 Fast 9 Furious 9. The name's got idea several movies back, but I'll call it F9A for the sake of simplicity. F9 sees the return of director Justin Lin, who also co-wrote the screenplay with Daniel Cassie. It also sees the departure of screenwriter Chris Morgana, who had previously written every film since 2003 to Fast 2 Furious, but the essential cast all return, led by the heart of the film, Vin Diesel's Dominic Toretto, also returning as Challen cyber-terrorist antagonist Cypher, and joining the franchise for the first time is John Cena. F9 continues a trend that started in Fast 5 when the series was given a pretty substantial makeover. That's when it fully embraced the crazy over-the-top club riding spectacle. Instead of running from cops and taking off drug lords, they begin taking out vengeful rough mercenaries and megalonautical terrorist planes for global allocation were thought not by government agent or supervised but by gearheads with the chopped up cars. And each new movie aims to one of the previous ones with wilder not era action. F9 sticks close to that formula, meaning audience how exactly what they are going to get. F9 shines in the action and a departed but struggle when it comes to a story. I say that completely worth that people don't go to Fast and Furious movies for their deeper severe narratives. Yet, most of these films are threaded together with just enough blow to keep things interesting. F9 dresses some new things, especially in its attempts to flesh out the history, because between teacher Storm and his strange kid brother Jakob, who is also the film's chase antagonist, there is a ton of old family baggage, and the movie spends way too much time unpacking Ida through frequent and lengthy flashbacks that are more invasive than intriguing. These scenes repeatedly zap the movie of its energy. Every other thinly detailed story lineage just seems to be there to set up the next action beat. Jacob is after a digital Tom state device called Tyrese, which puts a temper on Turn's retirement with Lady Michelle Rodriguez and his young son. Jacob's motivates are muddled at best, but he is a big enough threat for Tom and his casual incords to gossip up and go after him. That leads to a number of androgynous and mostly funa action seen in places like Monte-Ito, Anderburg and Tokyo, most involving some form of vehicular. Lin flat out knows how to stage issues and edits these late sequence, and that's one place where F9 doesn't appear. The action is stunning with its Clara, where the bulk of the film's $200 million plus budget went. Still, it's hard to shake the clear issue with the writing. To be fair, things like logic, reality, even physics simply don't apply to these movies. You have to return off a portion of your brain and let some obvious questions and concerns drift off into the ether. But in F9, some things are hard to look past, including the aforementioned blend and momentum zapping flashbacks. Also, never has the series had a more genetic threat to face. It's not the fault of Cena, who starts off as stiff and emotionalist in T100 but loosen up over time. There's just no story for him work with. He is a bad guy looking for a thing that could essentially destroy the world. The sibling dynamic is supposed to add an extra layer but doesn't. Instead, I spend my time wondering how Jacob has never come up in a franchise so heavily about family. The main returning character all do what you expect them to do. Don speaks in his signature super seriously cross and still has his affinity for white muscle shirts. Lacha broads lock and our protecting mother body can still hold our own against any of the guys. Roman played by Tyrese Gibson and Tage played by Chris Ludacris offer of the film's comic relief. Maya played by Jordana Brewster brings a sweetness to the film while the spirited Ramsey played by Nathalie Emmanuel may be my overall favorite of the bunch. We also get the return of Han played by Sung Kang, a welcome old face who adds some not a lot much needed depth. Other character don't fear Russell well. Theron gets a cyclic plastic cell called herself Mr. Nobody appears in a couple of transmissions and flashbacks Thana finishes. I am still not sure what happened to him. It's always good seeing a Michelle Rooker and Helen Mirren, but you hear they mainly just make appearances. Instead time is wasted with needless cameos like a Crankshock's Cardi B Cena that's only there to have Cardi B in the movie. F9 is a tricky film to review in a very real sense. This is exactly what a true fans of the series want. It makes no apologies for its over-the-topness and it never pretends to be anything other than what it is. For the reasons a fan will watch and probably leave you please. But those who may be growing the attendeest bite right of the franchisee formula may find themselves checking out it during the film's lengthy runtime. I know I was eyeing my watch and hungry for a little something to chew on, but the action remained the real strength and it ballad at the movie at just barely but enough to making a setting a music a thrill. F9 opens in theaters Fast and Furious 9 that is F9. The gang are back for another port of deafening and magnificently a gravity-defying action, leaving Pluto Logic in the dust and driving their cars into a space. After 9, the gigantic stroa detail harmonies of the Fast and Furious franchise has finally ruled over me like a tank. This deafening fantasia of eternal and external combustion delivers outrageous action spectacle magnificers from the roles of narrative or gravity. There is one shot of a carrot driving up the far side of a rope bridge that has been cut and whose low rope founds are collapsing behind the carrot into the abyss. I think we can include Isaac Newton among the people who are getting their asses kicked here. The series has appeared to reach a kinda of mature endpoint a few films back with one solemnly called The Fate of the Forest, but then it's just powered on with more films and more driving a silence featuring Vin Diesel the Sharia namely and grabbing his carrier fate as the gang leader and international super agent Dominic tried to driving every fast speaking very low in a deep rumbly voice and occasionally finally mowing his camper and FF9 gives us some great comedy from Tyrese Gibson who really comes into his own as funny performer here playing Roman, one of Dominic's crew who has a kind of Sakurai existential crisis as he realizes that he and everyone else in the film has taken part in a large number of unfeasibly dangerous missions without ever getting injured and he begins to think that he must all be what superheroes got actions in a movie. Raman gets in a pro scene with Chris Ludacris bridges they somehow got blasted off into space in their car to destroy a satellite. The deal now is that fatherhood has supposedly given Dominic or Cena interference to his previous life and he is out of the game. Doing what? Being an Uber driver? No. He is apparently living on a farm with his partner Letty and their adorable little child. This incidentally was a point of maturity supposedly reached in FF6 by Dominic's Paul Brianna or played by the late Paul Walker when he became a dad. It was nonsense then and it's nonsense now. The team shows up at the farm with news of a new crisis and Dominic and Letty join them with a hardly a second thought leaving their child with the whole babysitting a childcare thing is deal with very costly indeed. Dominic turned out to have a brother Jakob played with straight-packed and parloped venom by John Cena who engaged in a plan to steal a funny data module connected with a shadowy camping a Mr. Nobody because Jacob has always been jealous of his tough elder bro. We see a black flashback giving us as Thea brothers traumatized backstory and Thea two boys are actually played by different actors. Vinnie Bennett and Finn Cole know a digital justification here. Jacob is in a cohorts with creepy German protocol Otto to take over the world and Theta and has captured Cypher Chisther and imprisoned her like Lou or Hannibal Lecter in a parts box Alta she is surely allowed out of bathroom breaks so Dom's gangs must get back together to take on his dysfunctional situation in cities ties including London and Edinburgh 07A having made these location acceptably and also WC in Tokyo. Helen Mirren has a game as naughty but nice cocky criminal Queenie. Some old cast favorites area revived out of the blue. Hang on for Thea closing credits sting with some tough-ina jacklog about how surprising is it some kind of them appear to have come back from Thea dead. It's all very mo and defined and a serious vicious. Everyone has now seen at the var of Johnson a speaking ina impressive mind Chinese apologically and a not for calling Taiwan an entry while in the FF9 promotional tour. Yet FF9 is geophily refreshing a change from the locked-on word of the slow and black fast and 4 years 9 that is called F9 is in theaters 20 years. Ida has been 20 bloody years almost to Thea Day since the Fast and the Furious cameo screeching out into our lips and for a relatively humble beginning as a serviceable Point Break knockoff. The series has grown to become one of the world's most profitable franchise morphing into something approaching a superhero spy movie hybrid. The Fast franchise is barely recognizable from its drag rising organs and while Thea Evolution has kept the series engine running from 2 decades and now after such a long time in the game, where the hell do you take things from here? Spacey obviously, retired and living off the grid with Letty and his son. It looks like Dominic Toretto has finally found a peace. This normally doesn't last long, however, as the remaining members of Fat Tom's old crew scene come knocking with the family reunited and gearing up to stop the world shut led by highly skilled assassin Jakob Toretto played by John Cena. Dom must confront the sins of his past if he is to save those he loves most. It's probably fair to say there's more than a hint of the absurd to the Fast and Furious franchise, from nuclear submarine races to a logic-defying tank leaves to unnecessarily drawn-out runway chases. Deafness has been the fast things for something now and it knows it. These are movies best approached through a very specific mindset, one that leaves any lingering doubts or nitpicks firmly at the door. By fully embracing the utter loyalty of the Fast films, you put yourself in the best possible position to get something anything out of the unfolding insanity. Fitting this build like a driving claw. Fast and Furious 9 is a complete and utter nonsense from start to finish. Yet, as with every other entry in the franchise, this is some of the most flagrant and cursely gratifying and nonsense cinema has to offer. Upping the ante and everything that's come before it, F9 goes all in all the madness that is test your disbeliefs and mental devi to its limit. There's undoubtedly much to enjoy in this approach. However, as the franchisee pushes itself harder and further towards the very age of nationality, there's an inwarrable sense of wheel spinning going on. As you had imagined, Fast and Furious 9 is like every other installment in the series, big, loud, and incredibly proud of it. Absolutely revealing in the lonely of it all. The film centers itself around a string of bombastic set pieces so outrageous and a draft that you are constantly caught somewhere between you and go from magnet cars to rocket cars and everything in between. The action in display here starts at 11 and goes from there, burning with a constant desire to take everything one step further. The results will frequently leave you with a grin on your face, if for no other reason than is poor disbelief. However, as the action grows in scale and lonely, so too does the overwhelming flatness. While there's an impressive gratory and swagger to F9's action that a few blockbuster can touch, the creeping sense of familiarity is impossible to shake. Overblown and overlonged, the film's prosperous plot sits an awful load of familiar beats and the long sense of fad only works to expose its flaws. Clocking in at just under 2.5 hours, the film's blotted duration really doesn't do any favors, scratching both the action and the extra-parting dialogue to breaking point and exposing just how lackluster it is behind the action. And it's this very action that's become both a blessing and a core for the entire franchise as the scale and stakes continue to grow. Everything else heads into the opposite direction. While it's undoubtedly impressive that a film series that started with backstreet drag racing and a DVD player Thor has evolved into the crab-rotting action thriller it is today, the more it ages towards Mission Impossible treachery the less inspiring it becomes. The family stuffs that's always been the linchpin of this series continually remains. However, there's only so far this can anchor things before all frauds sway in a big or infected bubble. To this end, The cause continue to have a ball with the marshal. They are given clarity, well aware of the sheer silence of it all and willing to throw themselves into things and gleeful abandon of the assemble. Tyrese Gibson and Ludacris Bridges continue to offer solid comic relief and a much needed dose of self-awareness, while the conveyor belt of guest appearances from past stars like Helen Mirren and Charlize Theron keeps things bubbling along nicely alongside them. Vin Diesel in his usual cardboard cutout self and seemingly in a separate pill-faced movie to everyone else, while Cena does a solid job of stepping into the sizably fight left by Diane Jensen as the central source of the film's tension and a narrative drive. Diesel and Cena are good enough to opposite one another. Despite looking and feeling nothing like brothers yet, there's no getting away from the clearing lake of energy with how Dan Jensen and Jakob Toretto around. With the pair now shunted off into a spin-off tray and no longer a presence in the mainline Fast films, it's left to Diesel and the core family members to pick up the slack. However, there's just not enough there to conspire it. Really, there's little doubt that this is a Vin Diesel franchise through and through. The man leaks the fundamental charisma to carry the whole things and make it work beyond a wrapped collection of action bits. However, as ever with this series, a Fast and Furious 9 will be judged not its characters, dialogue, or plot, but on the sheer absurdity of its action. Clearly aware of what makes these a franchise take long-term fast actor Jensen's after the kind of action we have seen a million times before, yet despite the familiarity in the films, a sharehold cannot be denied, quite literally aiming for the stars at certain point. The action Fast and Furious 9 brings to the table is absolutely made for the big screen, and while little of it will live long in the memory, it's exactly the kind of big bold fun that sense were made for, and after so long without the big screen to comfort us. Watching Fault blast a rocket-powered muscle car into space feels like the perfect way to welcome USA back to the movies. More over the top than ever, Fast and Furious 9 represent another high watermark in bonkers as action for the franchise, with a clear end for the prosperous director Justin Lin, since the Fast series huddling further into orbit to offer something that's just about the right kind of stupid, however, settled with a terrible plot, a distant league of energy, and a lingering air of familiarity. The cracks are really beginning to show for a franchise that needs to start thinking about how it's going to make it to the finishing line. Fast and Furs, I don't want to watch these anymore. I audibly sighed when I sat down to write this review. The Fast and Furious crew are back for another outing in this inexpensibility and endless franchise of tumber than a baga of hammers. Action movies that have a remarkable diversity in their cast and a crew make billions of dollars, and yet he cannot stand a single one. Fast and Furious 9 or Fast 9 nor F9. Why do these movies always have at least two titles? It's directed by longtime franchise helm to Justin Lin, who returns after his loss in entry 2013 Fast and Furious 6. In his absence, the franchise has experienced horrible tragedy with the loss of Paul Baker and a serious identity crisis in 2017's The Fate of the Forest. The atypical Vin Diesel-led drama starting clashing widely with Diane Jensen's over-the-top energy that became self-aware at times. It was obvious that the producers were more interested in a potential spin-off rather than the main plotting that usually drive these movies. I, as someone who doesn't like any of them, really did not enjoy Fate. So, I am happy to find myself feeling that Fast and Furious 9 is much more consistent in its tone and focus, and that is definitely because of Lin's return as structure. He built what his franchise mostly is now and knows exactly what it needs to do in order to survive future installments. From the very beginning, things feel different. We open with a flashback set in 1989. A young Dom Drio played by Vinnie Bennett is working in the pit crew while for his father racing team a distance by young brother Jacob. Their father then dies in a flaming wreck, something mentioned in the very first movie in 2001. As the rest of the present-day movies goes on, we cue back to more flashbacks of these two brothers clashing with one another over Jacob's possible responsibility in their father's death, leading to a climactic car race which splits them apart forever. All of these scenes became by far some of the most interesting storytelling in the entire franchise. The writing is solid. Barrett and Collier perform as neighbor Weird and Toa, Music A correspondent and cinematographer Stephen F. Vinson short a flashback in a film as well. The climatic race between Adam and Jacob uses minimal CGI, something that made previous racing scene look fan-made, and I found myself emotionally invested in their story. If there should be a spin-off of anything, I would love to see a full movie of these younger characters seen at this grounded and efficient style that Alina employs. But that great part of the movie is only about 10 minutes of the 2 hour and 25 minutes runtime. So what about the rest of the movie? What can you say? Other than it is mostly the same Fast and Furious thing. Different day. Dom, played by Vin Diesel, more dead serious than ever, and his team of racers and mechanics turned international super spies has to get a thing to stop a thing, and blah blah does it matter. It's a dumb ball that does some technical Nazis. Johnson Jakob has Dom's long lost brother Jakob Hans returns for some logic scratching a reason, and Charlize the Cypher is back from the last movie with an even dumber hairstyle. I would say that most fans of this series have never paid attention to the plot beyond okay, what can they blow up next? This franchise is not known for intrude and complex storytelling. You will want to see stuff smash into other stuff is that regard the movie delivers. But once again I found myself glazing over at every action sequence that seems to go on for 5 minutes too long. The set pieces have more effective choreography and current editing than the last couple of FNF movies, but if you have literally lost the thought behind them, then it just becomes a mess of meat, steel and constrict calling with abandon. Watching this movie is like watching a blender. All of these void and disconnected incoherents are put in a random, making you think this will not turn out so well. It doesn't. And then you have to watch it all disintegrated and mashed together into a singular paste of nonsense. Music A complete with a defining nose that stops you hearing your own thought. The result is interesting to say the least. Maybe I truly am the wrong persona to ever review these movies, because I honestly cannot disconnect my brain from logic and reason. These movies demand that you ignore physics and basic intelligent comprehension, and just cannot. Every single character should be dead 1,000 times over in every action scene, and every reason the filmmaker came up with to explain why they are not in laughable bed. How can a Vin Diesel fall 100 meters down a massage land in a pool of water, go unconscious, survives all of that, and still be able all 100 kilograms of him to be carried out of the water by Michelle Rodriguez? I am asking questions that fans of the franchise freely ignore because they see these movies are dumb fun, and that's okay. Xerleo lacrosse and slightly melodramatic F9 nice fueled by its open goofy energy, delivering comically great use chasey sequence and seamless fan service, all in the name of giving audience and in complicated good time. Over the years, the Fast and Furious films has transformed from modest cart-centric action flick into full-blown surprisey spy thriller that could compete with a Mission Impossible, never losing their sense of humor along the way. And director Justin Lin answers the Ragna of the first time since 2013 Fast and Fury 6. Handily balanced the unconscriber plot commission about family with the outlandish actions set apiece. Although this latest installment suffer from the inevitable diminishing return inherent in when a franchise constantly tries to stop itself. After a month of postpones event films, F9 should be a welcome sight for both viewers and exhibitors, opening May 19 in South Korea and May 21 in China. This universal release unspo in USA theaters on June 25, landing in the UK a few weeks later. Giant Denson and Jason Statham, who got their horn spin-off a film with 2019 hopes, and Shaw are not a part of the F9 but franchise regulars Vin Diesel and Michelle Rodriguez among others are joined by newcomer John Cena, who plays the crew's latest nemesis. Dom and Letty are trying to lead a quiet life with his young son, little Brian, when they are once again tasked with saving the world. Alongside team members Roman, Tig and Ramsey, they must track down a digest weapons program known as Project Arise before it falls into the wrong hands. But to Dom's surprise, this means he'll be scoring off against Jacob, his estranged brother and assassin, working for some nefarious individuals. To criticize the Fast and Furious pictures for being prosperous is probably foolish. If anything, the recent sequel have happily embraced Toma and his crew's logic-defying antics. In fact, F9 includes a self-marking jokia in which Raman marvels at Thea increasingly taunting vehicle and a vessel they have battled, including Thea hulking submarine in the Fat of Thea Furious. Lin, who co-wrote the screenplay, has an intention of slowing things down now, laughing in the face of physics common sense as cars swing through the air as if they were Spider-Man or zoom through a landmine stew field so fast that the detonators cannot go off in time. On a superficial level, these amp-up showstoppers can be dazzling in their acceptance, even if the CG effects area so prevented now that the characters area little more than weightless digital avatars jumping around the frame. Non-Trislan cinematographer Stefan Othinson and the film's 3-credited editor conspired to give the action sequence a breathless headlong rush, and there's a fair share of weight in display as well, in particular during a couple of set piece which make dig a good use of high-powered magnets. But the jolly invent of the action scenes only underline how painfully corny the drama is by a comparison. One of his series' trademark is only overly ponderous focus on the importance of family. The characters cannot go more than 10 minutes without thinking about how family means everything, and F9 enlarges the theme by introducing Jacob, who shares a past with Tom that will play out entirely, and his flashback which give us new insight into this strike individual. Diesel, who also produced, makes sure that Adam is viewed as a nearly mythic lighter, and the actor's gravity line delivers a while made to seem soulfulness and very tend to be unintentionally funny because of the heavily self-conscious gravity he brings to his performance, taking their cue from a Diesel. The cast tends to a Gloria Mu. Those stepped in the franchise lower will appreciate F9 nudes to a sideline sporting characters, including a few whose return to the narrative is sure to bring cheers to packed theater. But some of this fun service ends up failing for set only action sequence that satisfies a desire many Fast and Furious astronauts have long harbored about where the sequel might go. But such moments will admirably cheeky starts to seem like boxes the filmmakers needs to check off. Not unlike the familiar raffling between Raman and Tage are the cameo from Tyrese, and who reprises our role as the cartly calculating villainous cipher. As Fast and Furious as awful races long, it cannot quite outrun the impression that these films are losing some of their freshness. Fast and Furious are F9. How could F9 possibly shock a new audience after all that's already gone down over the past 20 years? They do it by turning hard into a familiar Fast and Furious retain of melodrama and full throttle plot twist, then taking the car stunts to absolutely austrageous new heights. In his latest returning tractor, Justin Lin brings a balanced signature character moments and a skill for captively capturing a complicated stunt sequence, making for a sequel that is both outlandish and big-hearted. Vin Diesel returns as Dominic, who is living off the grid with his ride-or-die partner in crime Lady Steely Michelle Dropes, that is, until a cryptic message pulls the crew back together for another save the word mission. They team up with Roman comedic Tyrese Gibson, Tages Merking, Chris Lourdes, Bridge Ramsey, Aspertly, and Nathalie Emmanuel and Mia Jordana Brewster then go up against their strong foo-foo Jacob Johnson. Their riveting leads to a brutal on-airliner high-tension flashback and bold cultural damage and countless unspoken civilian casualties. The screenplay by Lin and Daniel gives views in repeated plot twisties and familiar faces. After launching with the Fast and Furious in 2001, the car-focused action-adventure film series arguably took a couple of sequels before it truly found its footing as a franchise, but it certainly did, to the tune of over $5 billion worldwide box office cross for the series. And now the 9th installment is hitting theater this summer with F9. Justin Lin returns to direct the movie after helming Tokyo Drift, Fast and Furious, Fast 5. And Fast and Furious 6. Working from a script he co-wrote with Daniel Cass, continuing the story of Vin Diesel's Dominic TTO, the 9th Fast and Furious movie sees him forced to confront his past when his strange younger brother Jacob, played by John Cena, surfaces. F9 returns to the heights of Lin's best Fast and Furious franchise films, combining big thought and bigger action while depending on themes of family. After the events of the fate of the Forest, Tom and Lottie have essentially retired from their lives of crime and covert ops. But when Mr. Nobody plane is attacked and a new dangerous weapon is stolen, they are pulled back into the afraid to help their friends Roman, Percy, Tage, Parker, and Ramsey to recover it. Things are made more complicated when Dom learns his younger brother Jacob is working with his older enemy Cypher, played by Charlize Theron, to assemble the weapon. Because of the family connection, Dom brings in his sister Mia. The group is also reunited with Handu, played by Sun Kang, who they believe to be dead, but who actually holds the key to their mission. With Dom's strange brother at the heart of the problem their team is facing, he'll be forced to confront the decision that led him to banish Jacob from the Toretto family and ensure those choices don't put him new family in jeopardy. In terms of F9's story is just as overwritten as the other recent Fast and Furious franchise entries, with an overly complicated villain plan and a new piece of technology that necessitates Tom and his team's specific skill for the Jakob-like fate. In Fast 7, F9 works better if the viewer doesn't try to make sense of or really follow the plot too closely. It's simply the vehicle bonus intended that loosely ties the various action scenes together. In that regards, it's perfectly serviceable. To complement the main plot, F9 also explores Tom and Jacob history through a series of flashbacks that expand on the death of their father during a race when they were both young. Their story is much more predictable with a twist that's easy to see coming. But F9 leans into the heartfelt emotions while Diesel and try to bring the right amount of craft charm so it doesn't become overly cheesy. The siblingly trope is an old one in a film and television, and F9 managed to pull it off in a compelling way due in a large part to the film capitalizing on the franchise history already being deeply entranced in family. F9 is still an action-adventure movie about fast cars and it delivers a plenty of accelerating high-speed action sequence in true Fast and Furious franchise fashion. F9 continues to if not entirely flout the rules of science playing fast and loose with them in order to bring some fresh ideas to its chasey scenes. Land point talking magnetic is strong enough to carry cars, and trips to a speeds are included within the sequence of F9. Plus, there's a positively delightful sequence that fairly gets Helen Mirren squeamy shaw in the driver's seat of a chase scene. That and other sequence make for an extremely fun, albeit completely unavailable experience still. While the ideas in F9's big third act action scene are bigger than any other Fast and Furious movie, the sequence itself doesn't feel quite as epic as past films. It's not necessarily to the detriment of the movie, and it allows the character stories, particularly those of Tom and Jacob, to come to the forefront. As a result, F9 strikes a nice balance between hard and action that ensure the movie doesn't feel like a shallow auctioneer while still feeling fresh. Ultimately, F9 is made to be a summer blockbuster or popcorn movie that's big, silly fun. And in that sense, Linda deliver exactly what's expected. The Fast and Furious franchise truly hit its stride around Fast 5 and Fast and 46 when Lin effectively took a buddy action series that swapped out its buddies a few times and expanded its injuries into assembled vehicles. While the more recent movies may have struggled to maintain that semi-fun group dynamic and splendid its larger character with bigger action scenes, F9A is a return to form with Lin back at the helm and stronger character story as present throughout the movie. It has all of the big fun action of the best Fast and Furious movies while still offering us something deeper to ensure the core of F9 continues the franchise theme of family. As a result, F9 is perhaps the perfect movie to own at the summer 2021 blockbuster season. Its action lends itself to being seen on the big screen, so it's certainly worth watching F9 in a movie theater where theaters are open and providing moviegoers feel safe. Especially longtime fans of the franchise, with a number of character returns in addition to the most high-profile ones on F9 utilized the Fast and Furious franchise long history to great effect. Some of F9's recalling of that same franchise history practically is regard to Hans's return and Jacob's addition to the TTO family may not work for everyone, but those will go into the film expecting a fun ride, you will get exactly that. F9 is the epitome of summer blockbuster. It's a big funa and that makes for a fully enjoyably movie-going experience. F9 is in the theaters. Fast and Furious 9 reviews are in and they are calling it the biggest wildest movie yet. Start your engine. A handful of Fast and Furious 9 reviews have been given the green light and each allows us a peek into what is the most shortly the wildest installments yet. But the alien response is not all overwhelming or positive. While you know what you are in for, step into the family and organize a world of Domto and his gang of street erasers transaction heroes. There's a slight suggestion that the series is drifting along in first gear. The movie is not out for a while and this will be released in theaters. Sometimes when journalists expect a successful franchise will essentially morph into a different series over time. The Mission Impossible films become Bonnie films. The Fast and Furious films also become Mission Impossible films. But F9A is not constructed around an exciting mission. It's built around Vin Diesel and John Cena playing out the angst from the Toretto brothers' past. The family plot works even as you are aware of how thinly written Cena's character is. But it's not enough for an anchor. It's more like an excuse. This series didn't need a more heart. It needed even on-screen toagata, music a more Fast and Furious. This is far biggest wildest gravity-defying East. Fast and a Furious installment is Fast and Furious 9 when Diesel is running out of fuel. F9 is like a roadside accident you cannot look away from. F9 will Diesel wrong owning action. A franchise is desperate need of refueling. A confession: when I was younger I used to enjoy the Hummerina Michelle P movies this way around the same time that most movies night with friends and involved repeat viewing of the Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift. Things have happened in the last decade and a half. I have outgrown the Givlinia comedy and Michelle-based films, but I have also doubled down on my belief that a Tokyo Drift is the best entry in the Fast and Furious franchise. A recent rewatch confirms as much. But if one's child so stage approve everything in this regardless of whether or not you evolve, another generation of teams will take your place as the target audience for films about wearing reward claims and drifting cars. This doesn't make your old opinion invalid, but it certainly makes it difficult for you as an adult to defend the kind of nonsense you tweaked on as a child. To consolidate this passage of fat time, here's a story. I was disillusioned from watching the fourth film in the Fast Saga, which was hardly a saga at all back then because the Central Board of Film Certification in the year of our Lord Vin Diesel 2009 decided that a movie about a scowling bad man should be rated A. The polite lady at time place was Fermina Hernoes was the dude that PBR second we took Van's advice and did it give up, and now the ninth film in the same franchise is being streamed into homes not yours and is getting a theatrical release. The enjoyment of the Fast Saga therefore depends largely on how old are you and on whether or not you were able to successfully tap into your past. F9 is not as ridiculous as some of the franchise earlier entries, but noted for League of Trying. The difference this time around is that its effort to push the boundaries of believability or it transparently can. Director Justin Lin ended Fast 5 with a high-speed chase across Rio de Janeiro. It almost came across as to present a move so unexpected for a series that was originally about people who stole fat players that she had no choice but to smirk in admiration and sit back for the ride. This is similar to what happened when Tom Cruise decided to personally scare the Burj Khalifa in Mission Impossible Goose Protocol. It seems now both Cruise and Diesel are solely motivated by the uncutable desire to undo themselves, and it's no coincidence that both of them landed on the same outlandish idea with which to escalate these launches: space, the final frontier. As we speak, Crowd is putting together a mission to the International Space Station where he will become the first person to choose a narrative via feature. Meanwhile, Diesel decided to push this actual underwing Tyrese Gibson and Ludacris in minimum cast tone and told Justin Lin to film them flounded in a zero gravity against a green screen. What neither of them realize is that this increased the self level to a degree that will be nearly impossible to recover from. The biggest surprise now will not be to Saga the 10th and 11th film on Mars or to have Luda invent a time travel machine so that Diesel can drive a Ford Model T of a cannon, but to scale down and create films that hark back to the relatively grounded origins of the franchise. The action in F9 conceptually is insane. But there is a flatness in the execution that stems from Cena's decision to stage the film's most high-stakes set piece in scratches of highway. Besides the Onya scene in Edinburgh, whose impact is rotly undercut by poor Homer, the rest of the film action feels like an unimaginative repetitive slug. The movie's soul racing sequence however serves as an unexpected plus from the past are noted just a narrative level but also tonally. While it may trip over itself in moments of bombast, some of the soppiest storytelling which involves a long-lost brother played by John Cena, yet another character who returns from the dead, and a previously restarted woman taking the child of another lady as her own, resembles a roadside accident you cannot look away from. A cool canvasism has Saga into the Fast and Furious franchise beneath the glossy accent jokes that have been workshopped within an inch of their lives, and a literal contextual spectration that certain actors should not come across as a simple example of comedy drive studio filmmaking at its worst. F9 is blotted beyond belief to the pen that it seems it has eaten up the Duria platter in a regard time it is now balancing into your face. This is forgivable. Many films bite off more than they can chew, but for it to be boring as well is absolutely unpardonable. Years from now, F9 will settle into its position as the first franchise for an entry, rockless, ridiculous, and ultimately irreanimable. Directed by Justin Lin. Cast goes to Vin Diesel, Michelle Durgais, Jordana Brewster, Tyrese Gibson, Ludacris, John Cena, Song Kang, Nathalie Emmanuel, the Jason Statham, and he was not in the movie. The Enduring Order Rose franchise 9th in starnest cut to space for a extra set piece Buddha its Earth page family is what leaves a lasting impression. F9 is in the Samus and Robson. The Fast and Furious 2001, a scrappy action high picture modeled on Point Break 1991 was based on an article about a Los Angeles case for illegal road racing. No one is more surprised than its sequel have become an inflated blockbuster franchise to compete with the James mode and Mission Impossible than the street travel characters from earlier entries who now find themselves survival of multiple large-scale car-related catastrophes that even while Iko Toa would not limp away from a self-aware side in the franchise latest installments, Roman and Tage will join way back into Fast and Furious 2003 but have not reached the escape velocity that gave compressive Commerce Hobbs and Shaw their own spin-off. Discuss Roman's theory that they are actually invincible. Roman cites the many vehicle pileups, let's not even mention the submarine they have come through without a scratch, and there are occasional mentions of character who struck around for a sequel or two and died. Gal Gadot Giselle is glanced in flashback that sets up a final where Roman anti-drive Kara into outer speed, perhaps taking the series to the breaking point. 07 Reach with the orbital nonce. Sea of Mkrakra, Music. 1978. Earlier Fast Warrior films killed a regular after dramatic effect giving Mina Diesel series lead to who seemingly died in the opening film but turned out to be alive by the herd a chance to cry inwardly and make one of his signature Rio speech about her family. Fast and Furious 9 rolls back at the death of Han, a plot Bart across multiple injuries and the trigger of the adjustic for Han. When his killer went from Beatties to Olivia withholding for his crime. Fast and Furious 9 was released in 2021 and F9's ending definitely sets off future Fast and Furious movies. Originally set to release in 2020. Fast and Furious 9 appeared in theater after a year-long delay caused by COVID-19. The movie was highly anticipated for a variety of reasons, such as the return of Song Kang Han and discovering the truth behind a Dominic Dato's Vin Diesel secret brother. Directed by Chester Lane. Fast and Furious 9 continues the story of Toma and his crew a few years after the events of the Fate of the Furious. The movie begins with Tom and Lady Michelle Rower living happily with Tom's son Brian, but this all changes when Roman, Tyrese Gibson, Tage, Ludacris, and Ramsey, Nathalie Emmanuel arrives with a mission. Dom's brother, Jakob, played by John Cena, has returned to obtain PC of project. a device that can control every piece of electronics on the planet. This mission results in powerful calomagnets, the Fast and Furious franchise going to space and the family emerging victorious. Fast and Furious 9 has a thrilling ending and set up the franchise for future full-throttle adventures. Jakob Toretto is on the run and can return. Jakob Toretto spends most of Fast and Furious 9 as the main villain, but he switches sides in the end to set up his future as an ally. After Dominic exiles him from the family of his Rolia in their father's death, Jakob spent his entire life training to be an exceptional spy, fighter, and driver. This led him to work with Mr. Nobody Caught Russell before making a Moria Wildness star in an effort to gain the power he always wanted and finally step out of town's shadow. However, Jacob's business part turns on him to team up with Cypher Chazzy instead. This leads Jakob to decide to work with Dom and his crew to take down the Varia robot that he helped create. Jakob and Tom used a powerful magnet to flip a giant truck and disable projects. Once the mission is complete, Dom seemingly forgive Jakob and give his brother a new lease on life. Dom gives Jakob the key to attend second care so he can have a second chance, which is a callback to Brian O'Connor. Power Walker doing the same for Dom at the end of the Fast and Furious. After getting a huge from Mia Toto, Jakob drives away and is on the run due to his role in what recently transpired. Although Jakob doesn't make a pit stop at the Toretto family dinner at the end of Fast and Furious 9, it is clear that he is on a detective path. Cypher is set up as the villain for Fast X, F9 adding set of Cypher to be the main villain of Fast X and possibly beyond. The manipulative and genius hacker was the primary antagonist in the Fate of the Furious, but she managed to escape and survive. Cypher returns in Fast and Furious 9 as a lurking threat to Jakob. She is locked in a containment cell for most of the movie, but eventually convinced his business partner to work with her and turn deny him. Once Cypher is in control of the operation, she does everything in her power to prevent Dom, his crew, and Jakob from stopping the project upload. Even after they successfully thwart her global takeover scheme, pilots are drawn to try and kill them. However, Dom managed to destroy the drone and keep himself and his family safe. The frustrated Cypher is last seen in Fast and Furious 9 walking away from the drone piloting machine and her exit arose as though she is regrouping for another attack. However, Fast X takes a different track with Cypher. Instead of kicking her as a villain, the 10th film continues the franchise tradition of turning villain into allies. Cypher turns up early in Fast X to warn Dom about Dondi Rice Justin memo. Towards the end of the movie, Cypher escaped from Diddy's prison with Lady working alongside her former enemy. Cypher Isa an anti-hero in Fast X. It's not clear what side she will be on in future installments. Brian O'Connor still hangs out with the family. The Fast and Furious franchise had to figure out what to do with Brian O'Connor following Paula Walker's death during the production of Fast Furious 7. The movie kept him alive and gave Walker a moving final appearance on the big screen. Fast and Furious 9 confirmed that Brian is still alive in this universe and has settled down to be a father. But it also goes a step further. The movie explained that he is the only watching his and Mia's kids while she gets involved in the search for Jakob. At the very end of Fast and Furious line, the movie shows that Brian still hangs out with Tom at the crib as his blue Skyline pulls into the driveway of the Toretto original home. The movie cuts to the credits before Brian is shown in a screen, but the implication is significant. While Walker only appears in Artifact Ilford and Fast X, those involved with the franchise have teased that there is a chance Brian will return using similar technique that Furious 7 aided to complete his role after Walker's passing. Fast and Furious 9 confirming that Brian is still hanging out with the family plants the seeds for an actual appearances in future films. F9 post-credit scene Han gets just a gains to take her to Shaw. The post-credit scene for Fast and Furious 9 gives fan an exciting tease to it pertaining to the Justice for Hannah movement. The scene bring Justin Statham back as Deckard Shaw for a quick cameo as he practiced his fightings using a literal human punching bag. He has to spot only when someone knocks on his door and Dear is shocked to see Hannah alive and standing there when he opens it. F9's post-credit scene is setting up a future story where Han could get just a security card for attempting to kill him. Han's death originally happened in Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift, but the franchise changed the timeline to bring him back for sequel. His death is shown at the end of the Fast and Furious 6, which it is revealed that Toretto killed him in an act of revenge for what Tom and his crew did to Onsha. This was supposed to be the end of Han's story, but the redemption story given to Deckard in the Fate of the Furious left fans calling for the franchise to deliver. Justice for Han. F9 post-credit scene is paid off in Fast X when Deckard and Hannah are forced to work together against Dante since Fast and Furious 9 revealed Mr. Nobody helped fake Han's death. Hannah and Deckard are now on the same team despite their checkered history. Fast and Furious 9 ending. The Fast and Furious franchise may look like a little more than a mess of crashes, shoutouts, and ridiculous stunts pulled off with the help of CGI, but there is occasionally a story mixed in. The tally of superhumans capable of any feat so long as they enter and leave the scene in a car continues to amaze with bigger explosions and bigger twists. Over 9 films, the Fast Saga has grown from a film about a cop infiltrating the local street racing scenes to a gigantic worldwide spy thriller. Since Fast 5, the franchise has introduced more intrigue, larger stakes, and an era-ending new cast of characters to explore. F9 follows the family as they attempt to get their hands on a device called Project Arise, which will give the user the ability to hack into any computer system. After the events of the Fate of the Forest, Dominic and his wife Letty have retired to raise Thompson O'Brien. They are dragged out of retirement by Roman, Ta, and Ramsey to deal with a new threat. Dom's strange brother, Jacob, has an interest in Project Arise, so he leads a private army to steal part of the machine. The film explores Dom's history with his brother working fast to build up Jakob as an antagonist. As always, most of the film story is delivered around or between a bombastic action set piece and the main events or new developments for beloved characters. Perhaps the biggest reveal of F9 comes around the halfway point when Han comes back. Han chants the family in the battle against Jacob and Est for the fate of Project Rise. Otto shockingly betrays Jacob, tossing him from a moving vehicle and leaving Dama and their sister Mia to rescue him. Cypher, the villain of Fate of the Furious, forces with Otto for about 98 seconds. She uses a drone to bomb Dama, misses her target and kills Otto in the process. Dom takes out Cypher's drone, but she escapes the scene. With only a villain in the wind and the other only dead, Jacob is the only one left to deal with. Dom and Mia decide to forgive Jacob, but he is still wanted for a countless massive crime. They give Jakob Dom's car so that he can go on the run, leaving him a possible place in the future of the franchise. The last scene of F9 is a familiar barbecue to celebrate their success in the mission. Characters discard the observed events of the story and their plans for the future. This is pretty common to the franchise most of the films, and with relaxed debriefing a season. The strangest moment comes in the final shot before the credit. Dom is just about to give his founded speech about the importance of family when a familiar blue Nissan Skyline pulls into the driveway. That classic tuner Rice O'Brien's car, marking the character's continued involvement in the franchise. There's a mid-credit scene that depicts Han encountering Shaw, the man who almost killed him. Han's back in the game, Cypher still around, and O'Brien never leaves their strange place yet to be for fast hacks. What does F9 mean for the franchise? The family is on sea again, peacefully retired. They will almost certainly be dragged back into the game with whatever threat appears in the next installment. Jacob now flies outside both the good and bad side of the conflict. He could be a great new addition to the team, but he could also disappear immediately. He'd be far from the first cast member to abandon the franchise after a single entry, but John Cena could be fun to keep around. Han's back and he is after Shaw, which will inherently create some conflict among the family. They have been known to forgive the forgivable from the time to time. So, the winner will be determined by which actor will not be appearing. Cypher remains the main possibly protagonist for the next entry, but Shay could end up playing second fiddle again. The white part is still Brian. Brian was portrayed by Paul Walker, Wu tragically passed away in a car accident in 2013. Bastley the character was not killed off. His touching send-off sees him driving off into the distance in the final moments of Furious 7. He has not been seen since for obvious reason, but the appearances of his car suggested that Brian is still somewhere out there. The franchise simply cannot bring Brianna back. It would be needlessly disrespectful and largely pointless. Brian stops being the protagonist of the franchise long before Walker's death. His continued presence suggests that the franchise still has an unusual relationship with its characters and threatens a deeply troubling reunion. F9A simultaneously moves the franchise forward and left its character in the same status quo. Music Fast X is speeding toward the audience. But its plot could still take 1,000 interesting handbrake turns. F9 ending and mid-graded Cena breakdown. While there are 2 more sequels planned, Fast 9 almost works as a final to the 2 decades-old Fast and Furious saga, ending on a sweet note about family because it's all about a family that also keeps the spirit of the late Paul Walker and his character Brian O'Connor alive. There's also a mid-graded scene that notes to the Justice for Hanfana campaign. Is Brian O'Connor in Fast 9? Fast 9 director Justin Lin has confirmed that Brian O'Connor is still alive in the Fast universe. When Paul Walker died in 2013, Fury 7 had not yet completed filming, so the movie was overhauled to essentially write his character out of the series going forward. At the end of Furious 7, Brianna and his girlfriend Mia Toto, played by Jordana Brewster, flee the outlaw life in order to raise their children in safety. And while the specter of Walker looms over the subsequent Fast and Furious films and Brian and Mia have been mentioned, the series avoided directly bringing Brian back until the very last scene of Fast 9. In Fast 9, Mia joins Dom and agree to take down and stop their renegade agent brother, Jakob Toretto. Mia tells Dom that Brianna is looking after his namesake Dom's daughter's son Brian and their own kids while she is on this mission. The crew eventually succeeds in thwarting the latest deadly machinism of Charlize the Cypher, who survives to hack another dial with help from a betrayed Jakob. A heel face turned to the good side in a stable of the franchise antagonist card. But more on him in a bit. With their mission complete and Roman and Take now back from outer space, the crew convince Mia for a family dinner at Dom in LA. There's an empty chair with Mia telling Dom that its tent is on their way to running late. That's when the scene cuts to a familiar blue car and Iceland skyline driven by Brian in past movies, pulling into the driveway before cutting to black. While we never see the driver, the implication is clear. Brian O'Connor is back with his family. It's a bittersweet moment that allows fans of the franchise to imagine seeing Brian reunite with his loved ones without choosing any standing digital effect to actually show Paul Walker. Fastline mid-credit scene Justice for Han. Following the aforementioned Brian O'Connor note, there is a mid-credit scene that delivers on the Fana campaign, but maybe not to the extent that some fans would like. Fast 9 reveals how and why Hanua survived being killed by Ricard shot in the mid-credit scene of Fast and Furious 6. Well, technically in Tokyo Drift, but Redkin to have been at the hands of Fasha while Shaw was certainly out to kill Han. It turns out Han's actually fired at him. Ice was all staged using technical facility by Mr. Nobody, who had to cry Han to work for his covered-up agency. Faking his death allowed Han to stay in Tokyo and protect from those who want her DNA to unlock Project Harris. In the years since Han as the FA franchise redeemed Ricard Shaw, even turning him into a key anti-hero, partnered with Dan Jensen's Luke Hobbs in their own 2019 spin-off movie. Needless to say, Fast and Furious, not only redeeming, but elevating the man who ruthlessly murdered Han, one of the series' good guys never quite right with many fans, and a Justice for Han social media campaign was born. Even Jason Statham said Han deserves justice. Once it was revealed that Han would indeed return from the dead in Fast 9 coma, the speculation has been not only on how the movie would explain that, but also whether Han would get his revenge in Asha. The mid-credited scene of Fast 9 teases the letter but nothing more. In the mid-credit scene, a hot kickboxer is seen pummeling a punching bag. It's Ricard Shaw who then zips open the bag to reveal a prisoner inside. The man is a part of a criminal operation involving a tech. Shaw zips the backpack to answer at the door, and when open it, It's a very alive and well. Han is standing there. The mid-credited scene ends up Shah's shocked face. We don't know whether Hannah and Shah then fought each other or if Hannah simply explained everything to him. Probably the Fast crew, or perhaps Mr. Nobody explained to Han how Shah had proven himself an ally in the ensuing years. So no harm no foul, but still Shah left him to die in a very rig. Whether fans will truly see Han brings just Sia to Shah in a future film or even in a Hopes and Shaw sequel remains to be seen. What did you think of the nod to Brianna O'Connor at the end of the first 9 out of the Hannah and credit scene? Let us know in the comments. The F9 post-credit scene explained. Get ready for Fast 10A showdown. All credits roll on Universal F9. A stranger noting to theistic four-horn accuracy setup. What would be the biggest face-off in the upcoming Fast 10A and one of the most heated showdown in a Fast and Furious history thus far? Ina the scene. Jazz Umsterman, farmer of MI6A agent Akkard Shaw. Last seen in the 2019 spin-off Hopes and Shaw is working his issues out on a punching bag somewhere in an undisclosed squatter facility. Inside the bag is an unformed Ida who swiftly offers up a flash drive full of intel shot, as does indeed he, I suppose just for fun. Then a ghost from his past appears at the door. Song Kong's Han Holes Shaw ostensibly blew up in a ferry Tokyo crash in Fast and Furious 6. An act so heinous saw any a family so rude. It was depicted again for good measures in Furious 7. Lorded class ensure the scene cuts to a black to be continued in Fast 10A perhaps. The big F9 twist bringing Hansa from the dead serves several purposes, but to understand why you might need to revisit a little Fast history. First introduced in the third film, The Fast and Furious, Tokyo Drift, Han Lu. Han Solo swiftly became a fan favorite, as so popular he returned in the next 3 prequel films despite having technically died at the end of Tokyo Drift. In a Fast and Furious 6 post-credited scene, Ida was revealed that the Mercedes that fatally crashed into Han Mazda RX-7 was actually driven by Stat'Amd Carter Shaw, setting the stage for Shaw to become the main villain of the Savina film. But after trying to kill Dominic Toretto and the rest of his friends in a Furious 7 disproportionate and misguided revenge for them having merely put his brother Omen in the hospital, Shaw was redeemed in the 8 film 2017 Fate of the Furious. In addition to being welcomed to the familiar barbecue, he was given his oven hero a spin-off film opposite The Rock Johnson as Special Agent Luke Hobbs. Han fans wonder how the loyal TTO family could possibly embrace his killer as one of their own. To move portrayed the core values of the Fast franchise. Willie Hobbs and Shaw seems to patronize the commercial availability of white heroism over the life of an oversized beloved non-white character. Justice for Han was born in F9A, directed by Chester Lin and written by Alan and Daniel Cassie. That Justice delivered as Han revealed that he used a Shaw's attack as cover to fake his own death and go undercover for Mr. Nobody while still mourning the loss of his love Cassie, which mean that technically speaking, the filmmaker have found a way to absolve Shaw of the moral weight of killing Han, even if he definitely for sure on purpose me to murder him and only did not murder him by virtue of a secret extraction. Either way, Han and Shaw have a lot of catching up to do. It's telling that F9, which introduced Tom and Mia's long-lost brother Jakob Johnson as its primary antagonist, does not end with a bad guy or gal casting an ominous shadow over the celebratory chronicling. There's no mystery figure coming out of the woodwork to foreshadow the next chapter. Who knew threaded to tease, although child careless the safer is still out there, status unknown. Mostly the stringer remind us there's this matter of outstanding family business to clean up. True justice is what will come next for Hannah as the franchise heads into its final chapter. Thanks to the overwhelming nature of how Fast Lower is written, Statham has for years had the invaluable task of answering to fans for Shaw's actions. Well, look, all we saw was a snapshot of something. We don't know exactly what happened. We don't know the full story. Statham told the Times in a 2019 F9 lightened his load and opened the door for the main films to merge again with the Hopes and Shine off branch, which could bring Hopes the Shadow Wana organization and its objectivated identified leader along with it. Lina, who has introduced Han and Kang to the universe in his first Fast film as a director, took the challenge of correcting the course personally on the set of F9. It spotted added logistic for Han's shirt wearing his attention on his sleeve. And when Han did make his return to the franchise revealed in a surprising appearances in the first F9 trailer, the moment was an emotional one for Kang fans that showed him what Han meant to them. The irony he notes with a love that few remembers that he and Thea actually go way back. Many years ago they had started it together in a Thea Jet Li action flick war as FBI agent on the same team. That's Kang's character covering Saitama from a sniper post in the film's big climax. Too Fast, Too Furious cast member Dion Opie also stars. After filming wrapped in 2006, the two actors found themselves at the airport heading out. Saitama asked what Kang had lined up next. Kang had a new movie opening soon, at the Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift, and he goes fast and furious. That's a good one to be part of. Have fun with that. Kang said, then fast forwards he kills me and there's some explaining to be done. I would love to explore that with him. F9 adding is a game changer. Familia, it's a mantra by which Vin Diesel Stoma has lived his life for 9 movies and it's long been the handy slogan for the Fast and Furious franchise too, perhaps fittingly for an installment which sees Tractorist Tate step back behind the camera. The theme of one's chosen family has never been more pronounced. What if it means to be in Adam's me family and central to F9? After all, this is the film where we learn Dama and his dear sister Mia Jordana Brewster have nothing sibling who they never speak of. Johnson is morally Chekipa has become clear over the course of the film. Brian might have been the board of Tom Juice, but that was only after choosing to dissolve his actual little brother. But it's kind of a funny story about the past. It can come roaring back at you like a Mustang flying beneath a military jet. Hence, when the F9 ending comes around, all those inner conflicts come bubbling to the surface. Indeed, the actual narrative stakes of the fanra are almost an afterthought. How family wins. The basic mechanics of the ending are fairly simple. Jakob and his oily buzziness partner poor little rich boy Otto have successfully stolen access to a digital weapon operated from a satellite that gave its owner control over every operating system in the world. Or also Ludacris Tage point out, Ares is the go-to for if Jacob gets his hand on this. He'll be the god of damn near everything. Once this upload is complete, Jacob and Otto will more or less be able to hold the whole world hostage. The actual folk who save the day are really T and Roman, who ride a rocket-powered patriarch pharaoh into space by driving the car straight through the satellite. They prevent Otto from gaining control of the hold first at digital speed. But back on Earth, has already cut Jacob out at the point of making a new deal with his brief prisoner Cypher Chair Theron, which on a certain level you have to respect since she burned Otto harder than 1,000 amines with that you are your line. By teaming with Cypher, the silver spoon prick sets Jacob up to die instant. Little brother forms a new allies with his long lost siblings and together they bring down Otto struck and Cypher's drone control plane. Why do I so furious? More important than the bloated mechanic of space travel and digital amifigans, however, is the relationship between Dom and Jakob established with a total straight-face sincerity. In the opening credit, Dom and Jacob backstory rewrite the very Fast and a Furious movie where we were told Domia went to prison for beating near to death the man responsible for his father's racing crash. As we all discover it through flashback, that was a lie that Tom only wishes were the truth. Willie the man who got Trench might have helped to cause his father to crash. Papa was set up to lose the race due to Jacob's sabotaging the vehicle. This is the dirty secret which caused Tom to banish Jakob from his sight after he got out of the prison, and it is why Jacob remarried himself into World Johnson. He wanted to be his own man and a greater alpha than his big brother could ever dream of becoming. Dom Toretto, the ultimate better family's post his actual flesh and plot away, and he has been attempting to replace him ever since. It's an interesting retcon which gives his Strat family a little more depth and also sets Cena up to be a franchisee mentor, possibly replacing the unmentionable Luke Hobbs. Diane Jensen, whose off-screen beef with certain co-star makes a return unlikely because of course Jacob really didn't try to kill his father. It was Adam's misunderstanding because their dada asked Jacob to help him through the racia and through the compassionate influence of Mia. Jakob discovered he really still wants to be Dom's little bro. It's a nice sentiment, although it plays an interesting contrast to another major subplot in F9. Much of the film is rightly viewed to bringing justice to Han, who died in a Fast and Furious 6 Tokyo Drift. The timeline is complicated, yet his murderer was forgiven and accepted as a member of the family in the Fate of the Furious. In F9, it's revealed that Han faked his death to protect a younger orphan named Ellie in Tokyo. Nonetheless, the man Dom thought killed another surrogate brother was invited to the family barbecue in the last movie. Jakob did not kill anyone in Dom's new family, but he did try to hurt Ellie, whose brother held at the arrest access courts. He certainly kidnapped her and threatened her and extend a member of the family. It's also unclear if Jakob played a role in shooting down the plan. Mr. Nobody was on before the movie started, but he did work with Cypher at the time. The woman who also killed the mother of Dom's child. We of course don't know if Mr. Nobody is alive or dead, but he was a close enough associate to Tom's Akina that they wanted to investigate his disappearances and save him if they could. In other words, Jakob is only a few degrees removed from Jason's death as Shaw, who was so quickly forgiven. But then I suppose that way was never learned Mr. Nobody's fate. Nor is Jakob quite yet at the stage of being at the family checkout. That can come later, as there are at least 2 more Manlin Fast and Furious movies in the works. In the meantime, at the film's closes on Tom once again at the grill. Tage and Roman have returned from space after spending weeks on the International Space Station. It's just how there was enough food at their region for their unplanned visit and how this was not a global incident. Also, would international governments see them as heroes for stopping a terrorist like Cypher? And if so, would that note be front page Seder around the world? Whatever, they are back from orbit and are now chilling in East LA with Tom's food is put on the table. Everyone waits for the one person whose chair remains empty. While the movie has the good grace not to CJ Paul Walker's fascia into another scene, the unseen driver running late to the dinner is of course Brian. At least in this universe, the reunion is whole. And if you stay for the post-credits, Hannah Major truly buried the hatch with the family's most controversial member Jason Statham. But that's another story for another time. Jason Statham F9, the final scene and the return of a key character. F9 is finally out in theaters after a lengthy delay, and Drive Chester Neil Lettuce Fast and Furious movie helps pave the way for the final 2 films in the Fast Saga. Let's take a look at what happened as the new film comes to close and not the ones on Cars. We have already discussed what happened in the mid-credited scene when Jason Statham comes face to face with Song Kang's Han after seemingly killing him on the streets of Tokyo. So let's back up a little and talk about what happened at the end of the film proper, just before the credits roll. While his entire franchise has an explored theme of family over the years, AF9 makes that idea literal by introducing Jakob Toretto, the strange brother of Dominic and Mia. But he has happened several times already. Jakob begins the film a villain, but inside as another member of Tom's crew. It even ends when Dom referring that Samyania once gave him a 10-second scar in the original movie. And here passes that a favor on to Jakob to help him escape. That person of course is Brian O'Connor, the undercover pop character who was played by Paul Walker before his tragic death in 2013. Who is in the blue Nissan at the end of F9, the 9th installment in the Fast and Furious franchise, directed by Justin Lin, sees Dominic Toretto Vin Diesel reuniting with its strange brother Jakob. The film includes a lot of familiar faces from past films, including the Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift crew who have surprisingly become rocket scientists living in Norway. The movie is the most fractured entry in the Fast and Furious, as Roman and Tage go into space and not even Fast X could spot F9's ambitiousness. However, while F9 has so many unanswered questions, puns that were not even answered in Fast X, the biggest mystery is much more grounded. At the end of F9, Dom invited everybody back to the newly rebuilt house for a barbecue. Dom point out that there's an empty chair, to which Mia confirms he is on the way. Dom looks behind him and smiles when he hears a car speed along the street. Thought is not confirmed. The presence of the blue car from Fast and Furious hints at the arrival for another beloved character who has been off-grade for a while. Brian was in the blue car in F9. The blue car in F9 is a Nissan and suggests that the identity of the driver is none other than Brian O'Connor. Woe washed over his and Dom's kids in F9. Buta was notably absent while Brian O'Connor cars has multiplied and grown into an impressive collection over 7 films. He is mostly known for driving Blue E and Nissan's GTRS. This means that the appearances of this exact car in the F9A ending confirms Brian is still around. The Fast and the Furious franchise has been without the late Paul Walker since the Furious 7 following the actor's ultimately and tragic death before the 2015 movie had wrapped production. Furious 7, which he was filming at the time of his passing, was dedicated to Walker's memory and officially retired the character from the adventures. Brianna and Duso often got up to the weight the studio chose to retire Brian instead of killing off suggests that can always return in the future. The blue didn't need to be seen in F9, but it's definitely a distances for what's to come. This could mean bringing Brianna back digitally for Fast and Furious 11. Brian has always been a part of the family and the filmmaker perhaps wanted it to remain the audience that he was still essential in their lives despite not being able to show him. For those who have been watching the series from the start, the Blue Nissan's appearances is an obvious and direct callback to Brianna and Walker's time with the Fast and the Furious franchise, and Brian pulling up just as his family and friends are about to eat makes it seems like he is simply late to the party. But it still is a crucial part of the crew. It's a brief moment, but the decision to have Tina the movie ensure that Brian presents Cena F9 is still felt no matter what. Brian's blue Nissan is more tasteful than a comeback. The blue card in Fast and the Furious 9 was the best way for Brianna to return, especially considering how Brian's comeback would have been a disaster. Crucially, this implies not only that the Fast Saga upcoming release will continue to involve Brian, but any other feature scenes involving the character would also avoid the use of fast CGI, which is good news for the franchise. Notably expensive CGI was utilized in Fast 7 to complete Paul Walker's scene after he died. Despite the attention to detail by filmmakers and the VFX team, they still only barely pulled off using CGI to recreate the character. Apart from the risks of advently disrespecting Paul Walker's memory by evoking the uncanny valley phenomenon, another CJ Brian comeback could be perceived as unnecessary by a long-time audience and might even be seen as a crash grab. Indeed, CJ Brian from a Fast and Furious was a necessity for finishing the movie, not a completely pointless return in a different film. Thankfully, Brian's signature Blue E and Nissan in France suggests that the franchise will handle any future scene involving Paul Walker's character with the same symbolic awareness and respect as any future Fast and Furious movie. Cannot just keep using Blue Renaissance to confirm Brian's presence. It will be interesting to see how they can pull off more scenes with the character in lieu of expensive CGI. Brian's next outings will likely most involve more practical effect or clever nods to the character. Instead, Brian was in Fast X to a short. There was no award reference to a Brian in Fast X like the appearances of a Nissan Skyline. Brian was still in a Fast X in some capacity, just like how a brand was cleverly incorporated into F9A without the need for CGI. The same has done in the 10th installment, as Fast Z is so closely tied to Fast 5 with Dondi Rice being the son of Han and Arise. Fast 5's villain, Fast X has a prolonged flashback to the 5th movie's epic final. The flashback is of the ambitious heist where Brian and Dom just evolved to 2 muscle cars and are then chased through the whole of Rio. It was the perfect way to briefly bring back a Brian by reminding audience of one of his great and most heroic action sequence. At this point, Brian returning in CGI form is the feature almost seems like a certainty, which will undoubtedly be paralyzing. But the way Universal is incorporating the character into each movie without digital effects such as the blue car in F9 is continuously clever and tasteful. The ending of X9 is a recording series in which we explore the final secret and theme of interesting movies and shows. There are several reasons to be excited about F9. The first saga directed by Justin Lin returns to inject his sensibilities into the Fast and Furious franchise he redefined with the Tokyo Drift. The new movie jumps hurdle off-ramp and flashback is an effort to explain the familiar connection between Adam played by Vin Diesel and Jakob played by Cena and Justic Familia given to Horn played by Song Kang-ho died and died again via Thea Saga's complicated timeline or Zida when F9 family wrap up and Brother Saturn's enemies are turned brothers again. That's the Fast Saga way. We are left with a little resolution between two key figure Han and his killer Descartes. That's not too surprising. Statham filled at the main Fast and Furious movie essay alongside Giant Jensen with the spin-off of Fast and Furious present Hobbs and Shaw. He's got his own thing going on and we cannot expect his Ruji to ply punches with the old team, especially if the guy he panicked is aimed to dismantle him. As the credit roll on F9, we are left with an empty feeling. Song Kang's surprise appearances in the trailer is what sent most of us screaming to the internet. From his franchisee introduction, Han stole every scene. Kang was so adored that after he died in a Tokyo Rift, he was brought back for Fast and Furious, Fast 5, and Fast and Furious 6, which basically made movies that should have been sequels, prequels, whatever. The filmmaker don't worry about it until Thea did. The mid-rated scene in Fast and Furious 6 revealed that Han's apparent death was not the result of the Drift King race as previously imagined in a Tokyo Drift. No way. In fact, his death was a revenge killing commented by Chef for what Dom's crew did to his little brother Luke Ivans in Part 6. Thana again, let's take a big sigh. F9 take us another surge regarding Han ferry crash. Apparently, Mr. Nobody saw it coming. In fact, the super sparring master needed the Tokyo Drift accident to happen so that they could fake Han's death and plunge him into the shadows. After Gisela played by Gisela died in the 6th film, Han retreated to the 3rd film. He threw himself into the guards' treated racing and snacks. We thought seeing the American teenager drifter was way to advertise his spirit into action. But also we learned in F9, Han was already up to his old trick under Mr. Nobody's title. A Japanese scientist foolishly created a device that grants his user total access to every single computer on the planet. With his deadly Morcon Jacob and his teacher partner could control every nation nuclear armament and death just for starters. Mr. Nobody cannot allow these to happen. He hires Han to sneak into the status house and fetch the device. While Han is tracking his safe, another group of assassins storm the premises, killing the husband and wife outside and nearly murdering their daughter. Hannah rescue the child and in process discover that her DNA is the key to unlock the device. As long as Eli's protected, no one can access the Domaya weapon. To keep that detail secret, Mr. Nobody stresses Hath at the hands of Shah. The British producer walks away proud of himself but eventually comes to regret the decision in the Fate and the Furious. The healing cost he commended in that film began his road to redemption which lands him inside Hobbs and shop. Was Han ever in the Tokyo Drift car? It's hard to see as experienced in F9. Han is burning alive 1 second and the next he is safely standing next to Mr. Nobody is darkening alive. Was the car remote? Was Han a hologram? Does it matter? Number. What's important is that Hannah did not die. The fan favorite lives to kick ass again. Expect he doesn't get a much ass to kick in F9. He's tied to the device through Ollie but action wise has also tied to a steering wheel. Asa Johnson learned quickly this is Diesel's franchise. Even fan favorite have to take the back seat. Whatever justic for Han's area seeking is found during F9 mid-drag.